What's going on, everyone? I'm Jeff St. Pierre, and this is episode 171 of the Adult Education Podcast. Today, I am speaking with the founder and owner of Bridge 9 Records and Sully's brand, Chris Wrenn. All right, so let me set the scene. It's 1999 in Boston. The New York Yankees have won 3 out of the last 4 World Series championships. The Red Sox, they had a rough decade in the 90s, but things were starting to turn around. And despite things looking better for Boston, the evil empire always seemed to find a way to beat them. Inside those hallowed halls of Fenway Park, you could hear a chant growing. Yankees suck. Yankees suck. Yankees suck. Even when the Yankees weren't playing in Boston, you'd still hear fans chanting. It was as though the only games that really mattered were the ones against New York. Now, enter in some enthusiastic punks who decide to take advantage of this wild rivalry. And I say punks with love here. These guys were members of Boston's vibrant hardcore punk music scene. They saw an opportunity to use their DIY ethos and general spirit to make some money. They started printing up t-shirts and stickers saying Yankees suck on the front. It was a simple design and it made them tons of money. And these shirts took over New England. They became iconic. Everyone had one. I was living in Philadelphia for most of this story, and I even saw them there. I can't overstate how wild and important this moment was. It was viral before viral moments were a thing. Now, one of these guys out at Fenway hawking stickers and dodging police also happened to own his own record label. Chris Wrenn founded Bridge 9 Records when he was in college. He hit the streets outside Fenway Park with his friends to sell Yankees Suck merch to the baseball fans going in and out of the stadium. He took that money he made and funneled it right back into his record label, allowing him to release some of the best records from the hardcore punk scene in the early 2000s. Chris tells this wild story in his new book, Fenway Punk, How a Boston Indie Label Scored Big on Baseball's Biggest Rivalry. Now, I'm publishing this episode on February 6th, but the book comes out on February 10th. And I got to tell you, I've been a fan of what Chris and his record label have done over the years. I found my love of music and a lot of my friends and a lot of my outlook on life through the Boston hardcore scene. So I was really excited for this conversation. I think the book is fantastic and really tells a story about a moment in time that had such a major impact in a specific community. So I hope I didn't fangirl too hard in this conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. 100 times better, Chris.
Great. That has never happened before. Interesting.
As soon as you touched your legs and it made the noise, I was like, it's got to be the phone. That's it. Okay.
Yep. Thank you for troubleshooting that.
No, look, I was just joking with somebody the other day. Like, we've been doing these Zoom whatever interviews for like 6 years now, and it's still funny how every time you log in, it's like a new problem that you didn't experience. Yeah.
You become an IT person by default.
Right, exactly. And I'm still learning too. It's just funny that it happens almost every single time to somebody on this end. But anyway, Chris, I'm so excited to talk to you, man. I was so excited that you shared the story in a book, because I grew up in the Boston area, but I left the area in 99. I moved to go to school in Philadelphia. So I wasn't there personally for most of this era, but I found out very much later that it was like the Bridge 9 guys that were doing these shirts and everything. I had the Posada as a little bitch shirt. So I was someone that purchased t-shirts from you guys, probably from you maybe at the time, by the Bank of America outside Fenway Park. But I was just so excited that I got to read the whole story in this book form. I love it.
That's amazing. Thank you.
So the book is called Fenway Punk, How a Boston Indie Label Scored Big on Baseball's Greatest Rivalry. Chris, I want to let you introduce yourself, because I feel like I don't think I would do as good of a justice of it. So Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Cool. Thank you. My name is Chris Wrenn, and I started a hardcore punk rock record label called Bridge 9 when I was in college. I was 19. All my friends were in bands. I just wanted to be involved. I didn't play an instrument. I didn't sing. So I just wanted to do something to contribute. And so I started the label. It was a very, very grassroots effort at first. And I had no money. I was a broke college kid. So I put out one record a year. And by one record, I mean like one 7-inch, very bare bones record at a time, until I could, figure out how to make more money to do more. And that's where this story starts.
I kind of love that there was an era of time, and I know they still exist now, these smaller record labels that get started by friends of bands and people that want to really get involved. It doesn't seem like it happens quite as much now. And I kind of love there was a time where people like yourself, a broke college kid, could say, hey, I want to help my friends out. I'm going to put a record out. Let's do this.
Well, being into the hardcore punk scene, you see that everybody finds a role, finds a way to help, finds a way to do something. It's not a spectator sport. Like people are, if you have a camera, you're taking photos and then you're giving them to the band, so they can promote themselves, or it can end up in a fanzine. Or, for me, it was trying to put out a record. There were friends that did fanzines. I knew a kid in my high school that had a backpack distro where he would print out like a fluorescent yellow piece of paper that had all the records that he could get for you from some distributor. And then you tell him what you want, he'd order it and bring them into school.
That's so cool. I kind of miss that era. You mentioned cameras, and I know there's a lot of people that hate cell phones at concerts, but I think back to like my years in high school, 95 to 99, then in college, like I'm sure there are so many bands I saw that I have absolutely no recollection of because I have no photos, no videos, no nothing, no, show sheets, no flyers, like no tickets. It's like, I wonder like how many bands I saw that I would look back and be like, wow, I can't believe I saw, I don't know, Sick of It All, whoever, like somebody random, like, wow, I was there. Oh my gosh. But I have no recollection of it because there were no cameras in our pockets.
Well, and for a lot of shows, the only evidence that it ever happened might be a flyer.
Yeah.
And those don't always tell the truth because there's bands that drop off shows and you think they played, but they didn't.
So I live in Baltimore now, which is a little bit north of DC. You know the area. You've been through here before on tours. And the 930 Club, one of my favorite venues to go see shows. But what I hate about it is that when you get on a guest list or you get whatever, they don't give you a ticket to the show. They just give you like a little like admit one ticket to hand in when you go.
Oh, really?
So you go check your name off the list. And I'm like, yeah, but now I still don't have that physical thing that says I was here. Like, I don't know. It kills me every time.
I keep all that stuff,
I know.
whether it's like a ticket or a flyer or, like a pass, whatever it is, I always hold on to that stuff.
I want to do one more sidetrack because I just thought of this because you mentioned this in the book. You mentioned the band Sum of All Fears, and you are the only person I think I've ever heard mention that band. So I dug this up in the closet of my house. I have the Sum of All Fears demo cassette tape.
No, the Kasingle.
The Kasingle, yes. Which there's literally no one else in my life that would give a shit about this except maybe you. So I was like, I got to find this in the house.
No, that's very cool. So I was, when I started Bridge 9, there were older guys that had labels near me that I kind of looked up to. And Dave Duncan, who did that label, East Coast Empire, was one of them. And I remember I went to a show in New Haven at the Tune-In, and there was Jeff from Smorgasbord Records and Dave from East Coast Empire were there. And I remember giving them each a copy of my fourth 7-inch record, because those guys were so much more accomplished, I thought, at the time. They had labels that were doing more and making singles, like I was barely pulling together 7 inches.
Yeah, but 7 inches were a cool thing, and I don't think a lot of us recognized how cool they were at the time. Like, I didn't have a record player in my house, so I would go to shows, and artists would be selling 7 inches because they were cheaper to produce than, a CD at the time, which is wild to think about. But I didn't buy a lot of them because I'm like, I have no way to listen to this. And now I think back again, like, that was a cool moment where you had these items that are never going to be replicated, So I do have quite a few, but not as many as I probably should have, I guess, in my collection from that scene.
Yeah, no, 7 inches, much like flyers or ticket stubs, it was just a cool way of having something that was very specific to a moment. A lot of them were handmade by the band, hand numbered. There'd be a record release show where it would have a special exclusive cover. It's really cool to back then I remember when I'd visit with somebody or I'd meet somebody, you'd look through their record collection because you'd see things that only they saw. Maybe, a record that was only available on a tour that came through their city.
Yeah, the very first one I got was a piebald one at a show, where was it? Manchester, New Hampshire, Cafe Savoy, I think it was called. I don't know if that rings a bell, but it was literally the vinyl.
Was it sewn together?
It wasn't sewn together. It was in a plastic sleeve, but it was just like a piece of loose leaf notebook paper with like a stamp that said piebald on it.
Yep, I definitely have one of those somewhere.
I was like, this is great. This is DIY, right? This is Have you noticed over the years, because vinyl has definitely taken a big uptick in the last, say, decade or so, have you noticed as a record label owner that some of the back catalog, people have been looking for a lot more of those from you?
Yeah, we try to keep it's tough as a label to keep everything in press and put out new releases. So that's something that we struggle with, and I think any label struggles with. 7 inches, unfortunately, while vinyl is back, they are very expensive to press.
Oh.
So they're not cheap anymore. They're not something that people will buy necessarily just on a whim, right? Like back then, a 7 inch was like $3. So you just grab a handful of bands that you'd never heard of just because you thought the record looked cool or it was available or it was right in front of you. You might not see it again if you didn't buy it right then. So that it's more difficult. Like I was pricing out 7-inch records last year for a release, and it was almost as expensive to press a 7-inch as it was an LP.
Wow.
Like a 7-inch with all the bells and whistles was basically the same price as a very basic 12-inch. And so it's just the economics just don't work.
Yeah, that's got to be tough. Especially too, I feel like some of your artists, you would put out a 7-inch and they might go on to another label like Terror or American Nightmare. Like there'd be movement. So you'd have a property, but they would also have their property with somebody else. And I imagine there's got to be a little bit of difficulty navigating that as well.
Yeah, I mean, back then, especially with American Nightmare, I mean, I was just their roommate. I was running the label out of my bedroom, next to the singer's bedroom. So like there was no expectation that I was their forever label. It was just like, hey, I'm helping my friends, let's do a 7-inch. And then a year later, like, hey, let's do another one. Because I knew at the time to properly push a record, it had to be a full-length album. So what I would try to do back then would be to kind of like collect a couple of 7-inches together to eventually release as an album, and we did that with Panic and Ramallah and Champion, a bunch of bands back then.
We can dive back into the story because I do think it was really cool how honest you were about your history. I was surprised, like even the beginning of the book is you telling this story about going out to fight some guy just to make $500, which, I feel like a lot of people would be like, let's not tell that story in our book. But it is a central theme to, I think, just growing up in that time. And I don't know, I wonder if there was any hesitancy from you when you were putting the book together.
It's probably why it took so long to tell the story. I mean, a lot of this stuff is over 20 years ago at this point. So I feel like it's all very relevant to where I have gone since then. But I felt like it was finally time to just kind of document that period because, back then Bridge 9 was nothing. It was just, I was just one person amongst friends that was trying to put out records while they were in bands. Really the story, I think, is what happens after 20 years, taking that kind of moment and building something and then having it continue to evolve. So like, had there been no evolution, that story might not have been relevant. But because, it helped get me to another place, I think there was an opportunity and a time to finally tell that story.
I will say, when I was growing up in high school, I mean, it was a huge time for Boston hardcore and punk. I mean, you had some heavy hitters that are still around kicking like Converge and Cave In and some of those guys. But my mom would never let me go to Boston for like any of the shows. I grew up in Salem, New Hampshire, so it was a little bit further north of there. But she would let me go to the tertiary things like at, UMass Lowell or whatever. But I was never allowed to go to Boston. And it's because of your friends, I think. Like you and your friends are probably the reason why I wasn't allowed to go to Boston.
Well, I'm sorry for that. Hopefully been able to make up for it since.
No. It's all good. Obviously, she didn't know you guys, but it was funny when I moved to Philadelphia. I'm recalling my mom. I was in Philly going to a show at the First Unitarian Church. I called her from a payphone because we didn't have cell phones yet. And I was like, Mom, it's 10 o'clock. I'm in the middle of Center City, Philadelphia. I'm out and I'm safe. All these years of worry, you didn't have to worry about it. We are fine. It's okay.
Oh, I mean, Philadelphia has an amazingly vibrant hardcore punk scene. So
yeah.
I mean, it's you went someplace with just as much activity.
One of my regrets actually is missing the Have Heart era. And I say that because when I graduated college in 2003, my friends from college that went to hardcore shows with me, they all moved away. My friends in Philly that were in the hardcore scene, they kind of dissipated too. So it was kind of like, I don't know, I wasn't in a place where I really wanted to go to shows alone, and I was trying to get my career started. I sort of missed about, 6, 7, 8 years of music, and that happened to be the Have Heart era. And I didn't really learn much about them until it was like their final show, and I'm like, why is everybody so excited about this band doing a final show? I was like, holy crap, I missed this amazing era of hardcore from Boston with this band. Like it is one of my regrets in music.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, I mean, they've come back a couple of times since, which has been really nice.
I do want to get into the idea of going outside Fenway Park and just hawking shirts and stickers. Your role at the time at the beginning was more stickers and your friends are more involved in shirts. But I mean, I just remember going to Fenway as a kid and you'd always bump into someone trying to sell something outside there. And I don't know, like who was the first person to have the idea?
there's a long tradition of people selling
Yeah,
stuff outside of Fenway, right? I mean, I've heard stories about how the '80s were a complete Wild
it's
West, where there'd
mayhem.
be people with carts and just selling things off of cars. I mean, just everywhere. And there were efforts by the city to kind of curtail that. I think in the '90s. So by the time we came on the scene, there were other people selling things. They were riffing on the rivalry. There were guys that I referenced in the book we called the 21ers. They were I think they were Northeastern students that sold T-shirts that said Boston on the front and Yankees Suck on the back. Kind of looked like a jersey, and they had the number 21 for Roger Clemens. So we refer to them as the 21ers. But a friend saw that and was inspired to make his own Yankees Suck shirt, and it kind of evolved from there. But we weren't the first. The 21ers weren't the first. There's actually in my research for this book, I didn't even realize this, but in the '70s, there were two women that were selling Yankee Hater T-shirts on the bridge outside of Fenway, in the same place that I sold Yankee Hater T-shirts in the early 2000s, 25 years later. Yeah, and there's people now
Yeah.
still selling Yankee Suck shirts. I mean, it's a very long tradition in Boston.
Yeah, and you came into it really, it's hard, I think, for people that are outside of New York or Boston to fully understand that sort of 5-year period between 99 and 2004. I mean, that was peak and epic Yankee Red Sox rivalry.
Yeah. I remember standing outside of Fenway in 2003 when Aaron Boone hit the home
Yeah.
run, to end the season for the Red Sox. And, it's really hard for people to understand, especially in all the years since, where Boston has been on top and has had so much opportunity and winning in the years since. I mean, it was a sad time for Boston fans. I mean, you'd get so close and it was so stressful, and then it would just get taken away.
I think that's what it was, and I think that's probably why the Yankees Suck T-shirts worked so well, and the stickers, because the Red Sox were just good enough to build your hopes up, but then they would get let down at the end. And that's what it was. So, like, you just hated the Yankees. I mean, you always hate them, right? They're the rival, but, like, you hated them even more because it just always seemed to be them that would knock you off the pedestal at the end.
Yeah.
I love the storyline of the Codys. Those are the guys that go around and they try to keep the Massachusetts state law, I guess, in check with people out there selling items. And I love that you actually became friends with one of them over the years.
Yeah, no, Tiger, he's an incredible guy. He did his job well. He kind of kept us in line, but we wanted to make money, so we were going to try and figure out ways to circumvent him every possible way. He's actually coming to. We're having our first book event this weekend for this book, and he's coming to it. So
That's awesome.
he's somebody that I've known for 25, 26 years, and we grew a mutual respect, in that time. I mean, it didn't start out that way. We definitely butted heads early on, but I think, as I mentioned in the book, I mean, he's more punk than a lot of the punks that I knew. He was a guy that, he always speaks his mind. You always know where he stands in a way that's admirable.
And there was an appreciation for the hustle, right? Like, he had an appreciation, even though I'm sure there were times where you drove him absolutely insane. There came a point where he was like, you know what? These dudes they're making it happen.
Yeah, well, he was intrigued by, like, he's not a hardcore punk fan, but he was intrigued by the scene that surrounded the music. So he appreciated it. He's a working class guy. I mean, when I met him, he had multiple jobs. He was working security details. He would work for the city during the day. Then he would work a detail for the Red Sox during the game to kind of like keep us in check. And then after the game, he would sometimes work an overnight shift to kind of just do a security detail in the stadium. And he was delivering pizzas. I mean, he hustled, and now he's the captain of code enforcement. He's been with the city for over 30 years. Yeah, he's an incredible guy.
You mentioned the word scene, and I think for people that are outside of the scene, if you will, they don't necessarily understand how tight-knit of a group it can be, when you're a part of a scene in a city or an area like that. And you talk about it in the book about how so many of the guys that were selling shirts and stickers for you were members of bands. I mean, it was an all-in affair from everybody trying to get out there and make some money and have some fun and support each other. And I don't think that I think a lot of people look at hardcore shows of people jumping off of stages and moshing, and it looks like a violent affair, but they don't realize the friendship and the tight-knit group that comes along with it.
Yeah, I mean, it is a community.
Mm.
There's, people that you live with, people that you are in, rehearsal spaces with in your bands. Then people you go to school with, have jobs with. I mean, these are people that are one degree of separation away. They spent, I mean, back, in the early 2000s when I was living in Boston with the guys from American Nightmare. I mean, you'd spend so much time with these people. You'd hang out at the house and you'd go downtown. We'd go to Newbury Street in Boston. That's like the popular shopping street. And we'd hang out there and just kind of like the salad days where you don't have a lot of responsibility. So you just kind of hang with your friends. That kind of coupled with the fact that there was a music scene and that everyone was kind of trying to play their role. It was a vibrant time.
It seems like in your story, and not everybody, obviously, but some of the main characters that were out there selling shirts with you, whose names I did not write down, so forgive me. But it seems like you were the one that took responsibility first and understood, like, wow, we have a lot going on here. We've got something here that could really develop into something. And you had the label that you really invested a ton of money into. I wonder why your motivation didn't rub off on other people that were out there.
For a lot of the people, it was just an opportunity. It was just quick money, and they took it and kind of did whatever they wanted with it at the time. For me, I think I just recognized it as something much bigger.
Mm.
I think people that I was with at the time just saw it as, hey, I can make some money for this weekend. And I was thinking, hey, I can make money for this brand, or I can make this money for this label, and build something. Like I was trying to put it into something much bigger than that individual opportunity.
You mentioned earlier in this conversation about how you had met with some people that you admired, people that had record labels, and you kind of got some advice from them. In the book, you tell the story about how you moved in with two other guys that were major at the time in the independent music world, were major people, like Rama with Big Wheel Recreation, and then you had Aaron with Hydra Head. I mean, these were two massive labels in the late 90s, early 2000s of punk, hardcore, emo, whatever you want to call it. And I imagine just being in that room with them must have just kind of blown your mind as like, okay, here's what I can do. Like, here's where we can take this label.
So that was the most incredible part. A lot of times when you have an indie label, you're just doing it out of your own bedroom. You're kind of by yourself in a bubble, and the space that you're referencing, we called it Inatech. It was at our first office where we all got together and kind of were able to share a space and create a sounding board where we could all kind of bounce ideas off each other. And Hydra Head Records, Big Wheel. I mean, these are labels that were defining what was happening in independent music in from Boston, New England, and beyond at that time. So for me, having only released 5 or 6 records, I went into that as an employee originally of Big Wheel to be able to have access to these guys. And these are people that I knew through the music scene, but to have an opportunity to be able to say, hey, how did you do this? Or how do you do this? I went from 0 to 60 as a label. I mean, it was the education that I needed to help take Bridge 9 and make my label more like real. It wasn't just like a out of the bedroom kind of operation. Now all of a sudden I was learning how to properly solicit a record through distribution and getting it into stores and promoting it and advertising it. And these were, lessons that I was able to learn from these guys that had already, had a lot of this experience.
I think it's great too. They were willing to do that because I guess the mindset for a lot of people will be that if it's a business, they're not going to want to help out their competitor, right? But competition wasn't really the word. You guys weren't really competing. You were all doing something cool and trying to do something a little bit different in the same space.
Even though there was a fair amount of overlap between all of our bands, I was the hardcore label.
Yeah.
Rama was the indie label. Hydra Head was the metal label. Like there were kind of defined lanes that we existed in. So I think it was just an opportunity for all of us to kind of get a little bit more out of the equation than if we were just doing it by ourselves.
I think in the story, there was a point where I kind of forgot that your role at the beginning was outside of the label was mostly stickers outside of the stadium. And then you start talking about how you decide to make shirts. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot. Chris isn't doing shirts right now. This whole time he's been doing stickers, and you've been making, all this money and supporting your label by selling stickers. I mean, it must have been an absolute game changer for you. I know it created some tension within the group, but it must have been a game changer for you when you finally said, okay, shirts are where I can really start to change this.
Well, you had to evolve. I mean, I started originally just selling bumper stickers, and the money was really, really good. I mean, I was ordering bumper stickers for 10 cents each and selling them for $2. I mean, the margins were incredible. and the novelty was there. So people were buying them. Like people would line up and just and buy them from me. So as I mentioned in the book, I was going out and making 400, 500, $600 every night, and I was making $300 every 2 weeks at my job.
Yeah.
So it was an incredible opportunity. But as after 4 years, I would add other things. I was selling pins, enamel pins, patches, little handheld flags, but I needed to continue to evolve and continue to grow. So the part that you mentioned, there were other people, the 21ers specifically that I referenced. They were vendors that were there for I think about 4 years, and then decided they were done
Mm.
because it is a hustle when you're down there at Fenway. You're dealing with really belligerent people. If it's not just the other
What do
vendors,
you mean?
and it's not necessarily, as I mentioned in the book, it's not necessarily Yankees fans, it's Red Sox fans. I mean,
Sure.
it's people that are tired of seeing their team lose and are pissed off, and they talk all sorts of smack to you. So it is a grind, and you're out there rain or shine, and you're getting chased by code enforcement. So there was all sorts of reasons to not want to be there. So when they left, I saw an opportunity. I said, you know what? I need to start. My brand needs to evolve. I need to start making T-shirts, and that was a big opportunity, because now all of a sudden, instead of making $8,000 or $9,000 a month selling stickers, now I was doubling, tripling, quadrupling that with T-shirts.
The hustle is very real. And you just mentioned rain or shine. I mean, there's 81 home games outside of playoffs. There's 81 home games in a regular season. And if you really want to make this work, you're going to be out there for damn near all of them, if not all of them.
Yeah.
And those are games, like you talk about a couple in the book, about didn't end till 1 or 2 in the morning, and you're out there and you're ready to go, because that's where you got to make the money. Like getting people coming out of the stadium is going to be a huge spot of where, and this was a time, the early 2000s, where e-commerce hadn't really picked up yet. Cell phones were not as, they were there, but you didn't have smartphones. Like it's a whole different vibe of you got to buy it here or you don't get it. And you had to be out there that's a lot. I think about sometimes, if I had the money, would I buy season tickets to a baseball team? I wouldn't. I would never go to 81 games, but here you guys were every single night.
Yeah, well, I think with season tickets, I don't know if anyone goes to every game. I think it's just having the ability
Sure.
to, and then also to share it with friends and what have you. But yeah, I mean, it was an absolute grind. And the problem with having such a great opportunity like that is you can't not take it, right? So I missed all sorts of things because I had to be at Fenway to make money, because I wasn't going to make that kind of money doing anything else. I mentioned in one of the chapters, one of our artists had a final show. They announced that they were breaking up, and I couldn't even stay to see them perform because there was a Red Sox game. So I had to leave before they even went on and go make money, because, as I mentioned in the book, my staying and watching them would have been me giving up more money than they got paid, to perform. So I couldn't afford that.
It's those sacrifices, though, that led you to this point where here you are almost 30 years after this story begins in the book, and you've got your record label, which is still alive and kicking. You've got a whole brand, Sully's brand, which is what the shirts and everything turned into. You've got this whole massive thing there as well that seems to be very successful, at least from an outsider's view. I mean, that sacrifice, while you may look back on it and say, man, I can't believe I missed that show, you've got a life and you've got a family that's being supported by this life. And I just think that's the sacrifice you make to do something really fucking cool.
I appreciate that, but that's the thing. Like, and you don't know what door is going to open. I definitely didn't mean to start Sully's brand.
Right.
It's that's my paycheck. It's Bridge 9 is still very punk rock, and it kind of everything that comes in goes back out. But with Sully's, I mean, I did not mean to start a Boston's clothing brand. It just kind of happened, and you just kind of have to keep opening doors and see where it goes.
One of my favorite quotes in the book, at one point you moved from Boston to Salem, Massachusetts, where you guys were moving into a new space. And Elizabeth, who was your partner at the time, in the book you say she was hesitant to move there because of her tattoos and her appearance. But one of her friends said, quote, "I saw a guy wearing a sword on his back yesterday. You'll be fine." That's the perfect quote about Salem, Massachusetts.
Yeah. I mean, I had been to Salem. I was familiar with Salem, but I didn't really know Salem when I lived in Boston. So moving there, we realized it's a very eclectic city, right? There's people of all kinds and all stripes that are there. So it was welcoming to us. It was a really nice place to live. I lived there. I ended up living there for about 18 years. and it was great. But it was home to Bridge 9 for about 4.
As a transplant from the area, I have inadvertently let down so many people because whenever they ask where I'm from, I say Salem. They go, "Oh, the witches," and I'm like, "No,
Yeah.
the New Hampshire one, a little bit north."
I think every state has a Salem too.
But now your daughter actually has a store in Salem as well. You mentioned in the book.
That's right. Yeah. So she's 14 years old now. She started drawing when she was really, really young. She was actually we would go to the Peabody Essex
Mm,
Art Museum in
yeah.
Salem almost daily, and she and I were featured on their podcast when she was 3 years old, and it
Wow.
was very cute because we would go and she would draw. And when she was 6, she drew this really cute skull, a ghost, and a pumpkin. We would go to a local coffee shop and just hang out and kind of just sketch things. And so she drew these things. And at the time, Sully's brand was setting up a booth during October in Salem because there's a lot of Halloween tourism there because of the witch trials. So in October, there'll be 100,000 people that will come through the city in a day. So Sully's, looking to capitalize on that, would set up a booth, and we would sell Boston-centric T-shirts because a lot of people from New England will visit Salem. And she wanted to sell a T-shirt too because I would have this whole big thing, and she wanted to set something up next to me. So we took her lemonade stand. We made one T-shirt that said Salem, featuring her 3 drawings, and put her right next to me, and it sold out. It was a huge hit immediately. Sold out to tourists. I originally was hoping that my friends and family would come up and buy shirts. That we actually had to reprint it so that they could get them.
That's awesome.
It became so popular. Yeah, so she became a vendor. Would set up a booth every October on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays, and now after 8 years, we helped her open a store in downtown Salem, 2 doors down from the coffee shop that she did her original drawing. So like the skull that she drew when she was 6 is now this like carved wood sign hanging over the sidewalk in this really cute little old 19th century brick storefront that's just filled with all of her designs and artwork and T-shirts and souvenirs and things for people visiting Salem.
Looking back to the first game that you went outside with your bag of stickers to go hawk outside Fenway Park, I mean, did you ever envision so much would come from this? I don't know. At the time, I'm sure it was just like, let's see if this works, but did you ever envision that so much would come from that endeavor?
No, and that's the thing. You just never know what's behind the door, right?
Yeah.
The first stickers that I was really making to sell was way back in the 90s. I was making kind of souvenir stickers to sell to Hot Topic. And again, that was just an ends to a means. It was like, hey, let's or means to an ends. We'd take like a slogan, put it on a sticker, and sell it to them for $1. And in college, I was getting checks from Hot Topic for $500, $1,000,
Yeah.
$2,000. I mean, it was real money. It was pretty awesome. And then when the opportunity at Fenway Park happened, it's like, all right, I've been making these stickers. Let's put a slogan that Red Sox fans like on it and see if we can keep doing what we started with Hot Topic. And it's just going out on the sidewalk and selling to people as they're leaving the game. I mean, putting yourself out there, it was awkward. It was, I'm not necessarily like a born salesperson, or at least I wasn't at the time. I had to kind of go out there and just hope people buy things, and thankfully they did. But that pattern has continued from back then outside of Fenway to now in Salem with my daughter.
Well, Chris, I love the story. Again, the book is called Fenway Punk, How a Boston Indie Label Scored Big on Baseball's Greatest Rivalry. The last thing I want to talk about, because you just have so many interesting characters in this book too, is the bouncer. And I think I love that every city that I've been to has a bouncer. Like they have the guy that that you see at all the shows, that you don't mess with. Maybe they're not all as connected as the guy that in Boston, but there was a guy at the 930 Club in DC that was just like the biggest dude you didn't mess with ever. Also the nicest. There was a guy in Philly we saw all the time when I was living there. I mean, it's just there's a bouncer everywhere. I loved hearing his story as part of your story.
Thank you. Well, that was the thing. There was a lot of people that were all kind of doing their own thing at the time, and we all kind of crossed paths at a very specific moment. And thankfully, a lot of cool things have happened because of that.
It's a great story. It was a great look back in time, bringing back a lot of memories for me, things that I was a part of, things that I had forgotten about, things that I miss in my life. So I really enjoy. I read this book in like 24 hours, which for me is an accomplishment. I'm a slow reader, but I just could not stop reading this story. So Chris Wrenn, again, I just appreciate you doing this. Where can people go to find out more about you, Bridge 9, Sully's? Like, give me the details.
Thank you. So if you go to chriswrenn.com, it's just my name, CHRISWRENN.com. That has links to Bridge 9, to Sully's, to the book. The book's also available at fenwaypunk.com. You go there and the publisher has links to where you can order it and where you can find it. So that's probably your best bet.
What's the next big release coming from Bridge 9? Anything I should be excited about?
So this year we're working on some reissues. I mean, we've put out so many records over the years, so we're just trying to focus on bringing back some of them and giving them, some proper reissues. We've been focusing on our store here in Beverly, Massachusetts. So if you're in the Boston area, I definitely stop by. We're open Tuesday through Sunday. We have mostly hardcore and punk, but we have a little bit of everything because we're on a main street in a coastal town. So, it's just been focusing on being a record store and maintaining our catalog and just seeing what happens next.
Chris, I love it, man. Thank you so much for your time. It's a real pleasure to actually get a chance to talk to you after being familiar with your work for so many years. I loved having this opportunity, so thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Big thank you to Chris Wrenn for his time. His book, Fenway Punk, How a Boston Indie Label Scored Big on Baseball's Biggest Rivalry, is available for pre-order now, but it will be in stores on February 10th. I really hope you check it out. Really great read. A big thank you to all of you for listening to this episode. Until next time, be well.